In the quiet, sun-baked town of Cedar Creek, life moved slowly, and news traveled faster than the wind that whipped through the dusty streets. Cedar Creek was the kind of place where everyone knew each other's business, and where appearances mattered more than reality. Here, conformity was rewarded, and those who did not fit the narrow mold of acceptable were often targets of ridicule. Emily, with her radiant smile and generous figure, had learned this harsh truth at an early age. From the moment she could walk, Emily noticed the differences between herself and other children. Where her friends wore delicate dresses and ran lightly through the fields, she was told to watch her posture, to mind her manners, to stop eating too much. The teasing began as whispers. "She's too big. She'll never find a husband. Why can't she be like the other girls?" These words, seemingly harmless when spoken softly by children, left scars that would last into adulthood. As Emily grew, so did her awareness of societal expectations. The small town, with its tight-knit community, was a place where gossip reigned supreme. Every gesture was scrutinized, every action commented upon. People judged Emily not only for her size but for her independence and intelligence. She read more books than most, spoke her mind, and helped strangers without expectation. Yet, the town focused on her figure rather than her character. Shopkeepers would make snide remarks about the food she bought, neighbors would question her choices, and even casual acquaintances would offer helpful advice. "You'd look prettier if you lost a few pounds." Emily's parents were a mix of support and concern. Her mother, well-meaning but trapped in societal norms, often fretted over Emily's future. She worried that no man would see her worth beyond her size. Her father, more grounded and compassionate, quietly instilled confidence in Emily, reminding her that beauty was not defined by a number on a scale but by the heart and actions. Despite their love, Emily could not escape the daily bombardment of criticism and judgment from a community that valued appearances over authenticity. Emily worked in her family's general store, a modest place that sold essentials for the townspeople. It was a place where she could interact with others, practice her wit, and display her intelligence. Yet even here, she faced judgment. Customers would glance at her, smirk, or make passing comments under their breath. Some would outright say, "I can't believe the store is run by someone like you." Others whispered to each other, "Poor girl, she'll never find anyone to love her." These moments, repeated daily, chipped away at her self-esteem. Yet, Emily refused to succumb entirely to the negativity surrounding her. She carried herself with a quiet dignity, a grace that seemed to rise above the cruelty. She took pleasure in small joys, helping an elderly woman choose the right ingredients for a pie, laughing with children who admired her gentle spirit, or reading by the fireplace in the evenings. Books transported her to worlds where beauty was diverse. Love was unconditional, and a woman's worth was measured by her character, not her waistline. The town of Cedar Creek was a typical Western settlement. Dusty roads lined with wooden storefronts, a saloon where gossip flowed as freely as whiskey, and a small church whose steeple cast a long shadow over the town square. Life here was tough and pragmatic. Cowboys and ranchers dominated the streets during the day, while women maintained homes and families. In this environment, physical appearance was often wrongly equated with social value. Emily's size, unfortunately, became the focal point for ridicule, overshadowing her intelligence, warmth, and charm. One ordinary afternoon, as Emily was arranging supplies on the store shelves, the door creaked open. A tall, rugged cowboy walked in, dust clinging to his boots and hat. His presence commanded attention, yet he carried himself with a quiet ease, a gentleness in his gaze that contrasted with the rough exterior of most outsiders. His name was Jack. He surveyed the store briefly, then noticed Emily. Unlike the townsfolk, he did not see too big. He saw a woman whose eyes sparkled with life, whose smile radiated warmth, and whose every gesture conveyed grace and strength. Jack's presence introduced a new dynamic to Emily's life. For the first time, someone looked past societal labels and saw her true self. Though Emily was wary years of ridicule had taught her to guard her heart, she felt a flicker of hope. A small but persistent spark that maybe, just maybe, someone could love her for who she truly was. This moment marked a subtle turning point. Even though the town continued to gossip and sneer, Emily's interactions with Jack gave her a sense of validation she had never experienced. He asked her questions, listened attentively, and treated her with respect, a rare commodity in a place like Cedar Creek. The way he noticed the little things, the way she laughed, how she organized the store, the kindness in her gestures made her feel seen in a world that had long ignored her. Pivotal scene unfolds during a town celebration. Emily hesitates but attends, knowing judgment will follow. True to form, whispers ripple through the crowd, comments about her size echoing like daggers. Yet Emily walks with her head held high, refusing to shrink from their cruelty. Jack watches her from the edge of the crowd, admiration and protectiveness in his eyes. In this moment, the reader is made aware of the stark contrast. Emily's inner beauty and dignity shine brightly, while the town's superficial judgment seems shallow and petty. After the initial encounter in the general store, Emily could not help but think about the cowboy who had treated her with such respect and attentiveness. Jack's presence lingered in her mind like a gentle melody, something comforting yet foreign, something that made her heart beat a little faster but did not overwhelm her with expectation. For years, Emily had lived under a cloud of mockery. The constant judgment had taught her to be cautious, to hide parts of herself that others might ridicule, and to never expect kindness from strangers. Yet Jack was different. His attention was not a fleeting glance or a passing comment. It was a quiet recognition of her worth. Jack, too, had taken note of Emily. He had traveled across many towns, meeting countless people, but there was something about her that stood out. Perhaps it was the way her eyes lit up when she spoke passionately about small things, the gentle way she treated customers in the store, or the warmth in her smile that seemed to reach even the most hardened hearts. To Jack, Emily was not too big or flawed in any way. She was complete, radiant, and perfect exactly as she was. This perception was so different from what Emily had grown accustomed to that she initially questioned his sincerity. The first interaction beyond the store happened quite naturally. Jack returned to purchase supplies for his journey and to ask a few questions about local trails and watering holes. Emily assisted him eagerly, offering directions and tips with a friendly, professional demeanor. During this time, small talk evolved into genuine conversation. Jack asked her questions about her life, her family, and her dreams, topics that no one in Cedar Creek seemed interested in discussing with her. Every word he spoke carried sincerity, and every glance held no judgment, only curiosity and appreciation. Emily found herself responding in ways she had long avoided. She shared stories of her childhood, her love for reading, and her dreams of traveling beyond Cedar Creek. These conversations were simple, yet for Emily, they were revolutionary. For the first time, someone listened, not out of obligation, not out of pity, but because they genuinely wanted to understand her. Jack's attentive nature made her feel seen in a way that the townspeople had never allowed. During one particularly long conversation in the store, a group of townsfolk entered and immediately began whispering, making rude comments about Emily's size. Normally, such incidents would have crushed her confidence, causing her to retreat behind a mask of politeness. But this time was different. Jack, standing near her, did not react with disgust or avoidance. Instead, he quietly engaged the customers in conversation. subtly redirecting their focus and creating a shield around Emily. His actions were protective without being patronizing, giving her a sense of security she had never felt in public spaces. This incident became a turning point for Emily. She began to see that not all people measured worth by appearances. She began to imagine a world where her size did not define her value and where someone could love her wholly for who she was. Jack's respect and admiration were gentle forces that chipped away at the walls she had built around her heart over years of rejection and ridicule. Slowly, Emily started to respond to him with curiosity rather than caution. She found herself smiling more often, laughing more freely, and even looking forward to his visits to the store. Their connection was built on small, meaningful moments. Jack would notice when she preferred a certain type of tea or when her favorite books were out on display. He remembered details about her family and occasionally asked after them, demonstrating that his interest was personal and not superficial. Emily, in turn, began to anticipate his presence, finding comfort in the simplicity of conversation and companionship. Unlike the townspeople, Jack did not see a problem to be solved. He did not offer unsolicited advice about her appearance or encourage her to change. Instead, he treated her as a complete, capable, and worthy individual. Even as Emily began to trust Jack, she still faced challenges from the town. Gossip persisted, and whispers about her size continued. Some women, envious of the attention Jack paid her, tried to belittle her in subtle ways, while certain men, influenced by the town's shallow standards, questioned why a cowboy like him would show interest in someone like Emily. Yet, Emily's newfound confidence, inspired by Jack's recognition of her worth, allowed her to withstand these attacks. She realized that external validation from those who did not matter could not diminish her self-esteem. A memorable moment that strengthened their bond occurred when Jack offered to help Emily carry a shipment of supplies into the store. Normally, Emily would have resisted such help, fearing judgment or pity. But Jack approached her with casual ease, saying, "I can give you a hand, it's heavy, and I don't mind." Together, they lifted the crates, working side by side. In that simple act, Emily felt a sense of equality and partnership she had never known before. Jack treated her as capable, not fragile, appreciated her strength, not diminished it. The physical closeness of this moment was meaningful but entirely respectful, reinforcing Emily's growing trust in him. Through these interactions, a quiet emotional tension began to build. Emily started to imagine what life could be like with someone who saw her true beauty, someone who valued her for more than appearances. Jack, meanwhile, was drawn deeper into admiration for Emily's character, her humor, and her resilience. The seeds of romance, trust, and mutual respect were planted not in grand gestures, but in everyday moments filled with sincerity, kindness, and shared understanding. After weeks of gentle interaction, small conversations, and shared moments in the general store, Emily and Jack's connection had evolved into a quiet yet undeniable intimacy. Their bond was not the loud, brash type often portrayed in romantic tales. It was subtle, powerful, and transformative. Each meeting built upon the last a chain of trust, respect, and emotional recognition that slowly, yet irrevocably, reshaped Emily's perception of herself. Jack began to notice more details about Emily, her laugh when she was genuinely amused, the slight crease of concentration when she was arranging store shelves, the way her eyes sparkled when she discussed books or dreams of seeing the world beyond Cedar Creek. He admired her not just for her appearance, but for her spirit, her intelligence, and her resilience in the face of constant mockery. Every small observation, every compliment spoken with sincerity, made Emily feel truly seen. It was the kind of attention she had never received before, and the impact was profound. One afternoon, Jack and Emily were outside the store helping unload a shipment of goods. The sun beat down mercilessly, and the dust swirled around them. Emily wiped her brow, laughing as Jack struggled with a particularly heavy crate. "You know," she said, teasing, "if you keep showing off like that, I might start thinking you enjoy making a fool of yourself." Jack grinned, placing the crate down with a thud. "Maybe," he admitted, "but I do enjoy seeing you smile." The simplicity of the comment, the warmth in his eyes, struck Emily deeply. For the first time in her life, she felt a sense of personal validation that had nothing to do with societal expectations. Jack's admiration for Emily began to manifest in subtle public gestures. At the town's weekly market, he walked by her side, offering small compliments and chatting with her openly. The townsfolk could not ignore their interactions. Whispers started, some of curiosity, others of envy. "Why does he talk to her like that?" they muttered. "She's not the kind of girl a cowboy would notice." But Jack did not waver. He treated Emily with the same respect he had shown from the beginning, regardless of the opinions surrounding them. This public affirmation, though quiet and understated, began to shift Emily's internal narrative. If Jack could see her worth, perhaps she could see it too. Emily's growing confidence also began to show in her own actions. She no longer flinched at passing comments from townspeople. Instead, she held her head high, responding with grace rather than withdrawal. When a local woman tried to make a snide remark about her size, Emily smiled politely, saying, "I'm happy with who I am." "Thank you." It was a small act of courage, but it represented a monumental shift from the young woman who had spent years shrinking to fit into a mold that did not suit her. Jack noticed these changes and quietly admired them. He never demanded her confidence or sought to control it. Rather, he celebrated her growth. Their conversations deepened, touching on personal dreams, past disappointments, and the vision of a life unburdened by the judgment of others. Emily began to share thoughts she had never voiced aloud, revealing layers of her heart that she had kept hidden out of fear and self-doubt. Jack listened with patience and care, responding with kindness and unwavering attention. A defining moment in their growing bond occurred during a town event. A small fair held in the square with music, dancing, and games. Emily attended reluctantly, knowing that judgment would accompany every step she took. But Jack was there by her side, encouraging her to participate. When a dance was called, he extended his hand with a warm smile. "Would you honor me with this dance?" he asked. Emily hesitated, accustomed to people turning their noses up at her, but she saw the sincerity in Jack's eyes. Taking his hand, she allowed herself to be led into the dance. Feeling the music and the movement, her laughter blending with his in a way that felt natural and free, the townspeople watched. Some with disbelief, others with envy. Their murmurs could not touch Emily's sense of joy. Jack's public acknowledgement of her beauty and worth was a powerful counter to years of mockery. In that dance, Emily felt not only admired but cherished, recognized not just for appearances but for her true self. The act itself was small, but its emotional resonance was immense. It was a public declaration, subtle yet undeniable, that Emily mattered, that she was seen and appreciated in a world that often dismissed her. This period also highlighted the tension between Emily's emerging confidence and the town's prejudices. Not everyone accepted her newfound presence or Jack's open admiration. Some individuals whispered behind her back, while others attempted to diminish her accomplishments or achievements in subtle ways. But Emily, fortified by Jack's consistent support and genuine regard, found the courage to rise above. She no longer allowed the shallow judgments of others to dictate her self-worth. The ridicule, once a constant shadow over her life, began to lose its power. In addition to public affirmation, Jack continued to show his admiration in private, personal gestures. He would bring her small gifts that reflected her interests, such as a new book by her favorite author or a basket of fresh produce for her family. Each gift was thoughtful, never ostentatious, and each gesture reinforced his regard for her as a complete, complex, and valuable person. Emily began to anticipate these moments, finding warmth and joy in his attentiveness, realizing that true love and respect did not require changing who she was or conforming to external expectations. As Emily's confidence grew, so did the envy and discomfort among the townspeople. Her transformation from a timid, self-conscious young woman to someone who carried herself with quiet dignity was impossible for many to ignore. Where they had once whispered behind her back, they now openly murmured, questioning why a woman they had long dismissed could command attention and admiration. And with Jack openly supporting her, their unease intensified. It began with small provocations. A group of local women, emboldened by gossip, attempted to undermine Emily's confidence with subtle insults disguised as advice. "You know, Emily," one remarked, "you'd really shine if you slimmed down just a little. Men like Jack." The words were meant to sting, to make her doubt the growing bond she shared with Jack. But Emily, fortified by weeks of meaningful interactions and Jack's unwavering support, felt a surge of strength. She realized that their opinions no longer dictated her self-worth. The tension escalated when a larger, more public incident occurred during a midweek market celebration meant to showcase local crafts and produce. Emily attended, as always, carrying herself with poise. But as she passed a group of townsfolk who had long mocked her, a man loudly remarked, "Looks like the cowboy likes himself a bigger girl after all." Laughter erupted among the group. All eyes turned to Emily, expecting her to shrink, blush, or flee in embarrassment. Instead, she stopped, took a deep breath, and faced them with a calmness they had never seen. Her voice was steady and confident as she said, "I am proud of who I am. My worth is not defined by your opinions or your narrow ideas of beauty." The statement silenced the crowd, including the instigators. There was a pause, a moment where the weight of her words hung in the air, undeniable and powerful. Emily had spoken not from defiance alone, but from a deep-seated recognition of her own value. Jack, standing beside her, offered silent but visible support. His hand lightly brushed hers, a gesture of solidarity and affection. He did not speak for her. He merely stood as a witness, reinforcing the fact that she was not alone. His presence amplified her courage, and together they formed a united front against the prejudice and cruelty that had haunted her for years. The crowd, witnessing their unwavering connection, could not help but reconsider their assumptions. This confrontation marked a turning point. It was the first time Emily had publicly asserted her self-worth without fear, and it signaled to the townspeople that she would no longer tolerate mockery or judgment. Their whispers and laughter, once sharp and cutting, began to lose their power. Emily realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act in spite of it. With Jack's steady presence, she found the strength to claim her dignity openly, transforming fear into empowerment. The town's reaction was mixed. Some were still envious or judgmental, but others began to see Emily differently. They noticed the grace with which she carried herself, the strength in her gaze, and the sincerity in her words. Slowly, respect replaced mockery. Children who had previously teased her now looked up at her with admiration, seeing not a problem to be mocked but a role model of resilience and self-assurance. Emily's parents, especially her mother, were moved to tears, realizing that their daughter had become more confident, more self-possessed, and more radiant than ever. Meanwhile, Emily's relationship with Jack deepened in profound ways. The public confrontation and her courage had strengthened the bond between them, highlighting their shared values of respect admiration, and mutual support. Jack's consistent recognition of her worth was no longer just a private comfort. It had become a public affirmation, demonstrating that love was not about appearances but about the heart, character, and courage of a person. Jack's admiration also encouraged Emily to pursue her personal goals more boldly. She began to take on more responsibilities in the store, organize community events, and even help younger women in town who had struggled with their own insecurities. Her transformation became contagious. People began to realize that beauty and worth were not confined to societal expectations, and that genuine admiration and respect could change lives in profound ways. A particularly poignant moment came when Emily and Jack walked together through the town square after the confrontation. The sun was setting, casting a golden light over the wooden storefronts. Children waved at Emily, and some townsfolk offered polite nods of acknowledgement. Emily turned to Jack, her eyes reflecting both gratitude and newfound confidence. "I never imagined I could feel this way about myself," she said softly. "And it's all because you saw me, really saw me." Jack smiled, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "I didn't make you see it," he replied. "You always had it in you. I just helped you remember." The morning after the town confrontation, Emily awoke with a sense of calm and clarity she had never experienced before. For years, she had carried the weight of other people's judgments, the whispers, the cruel jokes, the subtle exclusions, and they had shaped her perception of herself. But after standing up to the townsfolk, supported by Jack's steady presence, she finally realized something profound. Her worth was inherent. It was not dependent on anyone's approval. And it was certainly not defined by the narrow expectations of Cedar Creek society. Jack greeted her that morning with his familiar easy smile, tipping his dusty hat as he stepped into the store. "Morning," he said softly. "Ready for another day in Cedar Creek?" Emily returned the smile, feeling a warmth she could not describe. It was more than affection. It was a sense of safety, recognition, and being truly seen. "I am," she replied. "And I think I'm finally ready to stop worrying about what people think." Jack's eyes softened, reflecting pride and admiration. "You've always had that strength," he said. "I just got to see it shine." Their days together continued to weave a tapestry of small yet profound moments. Emily and Jack worked side by side in the store, rode horses through the dusty outskirts of town, and shared long conversations about dreams, books, and life beyond Cedar Creek. The bond between them deepened naturally, built on respect, shared values, and emotional intimacy rather than superficial attraction. Jack never once pressured Emily to conform to an ideal. Instead, he celebrated every aspect of her, from her generous heart to her intelligence, her humor, and yes, even the curves she had been mocked for all her life. News of their growing closeness spread quickly through the town. Some people remained skeptical, unable to let go of ingrained prejudices. Others, however, began to see Emily in a new light. Her courage in publicly confronting mockery, her dignified responses to criticism, and Jack's evident admiration challenged long-held assumptions about beauty, worth, and love. Slowly, a shift occurred. Smiles replaced sneers, respectful nods replaced whispered comments, and Emily found herself embraced by a community that, though initially slow to accept her, now began to recognize the depth of her character. A turning point came when Jack invited Emily to a picnic by the river, a quiet spot on the outskirts of town where the sun filtered through the trees and the water sparkled in the afternoon light. They spoke freely, laughing and sharing stories, but there was an unspoken tension, a gentle anticipation that both could feel. Jack reached for Emily's hand, holding it with a tenderness that spoke volumes. "Emily," he said, his voice steady but warm, I've admired you since the day I first saw you in the store. Not because of anything superficial, but because of who you are. Your heart, your strength, your spirit. You're perfect to me, exactly as you are." Emily's breath caught. The words were not a flattery or a casual compliment. They were a declaration, a recognition of her entire being. Tears welled in her eyes, not from sadness, but from relief and joy. For the first time, she felt completely accepted, loved, and cherished. She squeezed Jack's hand, smiling through the tears. I've never felt like this before," she whispered. "Thank you for seeing me. Truly seeing me." Jack's smile was gentle, reassuring. "You've always been perfect," he said simply. "I just had the honor of noticing it." Their love blossomed naturally from this moment, built on shared experiences, mutual respect, and the deep understanding that had developed over weeks of companionship. Jack continued to support Emily, celebrating her confidence, her accomplishments, and her unwavering kindness. Emily, in turn, embraced herself fully, her self-esteem and self-love now anchored not in the approval of others, but in her own recognition of her worth. The town, having observed their relationship and Emily's courage, gradually shifted in attitude. Even those who had once mocked her could not deny her strength, grace, and the genuine love she had found. Children admired her as a role model. Women sought her guidance in cultivating self-confidence, and men began to see the folly in judging someone solely by appearance. Emily had become a symbol of resilience, acceptance, and the transformative power of love. A particularly memorable event solidified this transformation. During the town's annual Harvest Festival, Emily and Jack were asked to open the festivities, an honor typically reserved for respected members of the community. Hand in hand, they stepped into the spotlight. Jack introduced Emily, praising her courage, generosity, and the way she had transformed not only her own life but also the lives of those around her. Emily, in turn, addressed the crowd with humility and confidence, sharing a message about self-worth, kindness, and the importance of seeing beyond appearances. The townsfolk, moved by her words and her presence, responded with applause, acknowledgement, and genuine admiration. The town had fully embraced her not as someone to be judged, but as someone to respect and celebrate. Their love story reached its culmination when Jack asked Emily to join him permanently, not just as a companion in Cedar Creek, but as a partner in life. He knelt beside her on the riverbank, holding her hands, his eyes filled with sincerity. "Emily," he said, "you are more than I ever dreamed of. Will you be my partner, my equal, my love? Forever?" Emily's heart soared. Without hesitation, she answered, "Yes. I have waited my whole life to feel this way, to be seen this way, and I want nothing more than to share my life with you." The proposal was not just a declaration of love, but a symbolic triumph over the years of ridicule, doubt, and societal pressure. Emily had faced judgment, confronted fear, and emerged victorious, not because she had changed, but because she had embraced her authentic self and found someone who valued her completely. Jack's love had mirrored her own worth back to her, and together they stepped into a future defined by mutual respect, admiration, and happiness.